Imagine waking up one morning feeling exhausted despite having slept for 8 hours. Your body seems rested, but something deeper feels drained, as if your very life force is diminishing. According to Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychological minds of all time, this isn't just physical fatigue, it's something more profound. Jung believed that we don't just age physically. Our vital energy deteriorates when we ignore the signals from our own soul. This invisible aging process happens beneath the surface, and most people never recognize it until they feel completely depleted. Where are you watching from today? As you type your answer, reflect on this. Have you been feeling your vital energy slowly disappearing without understanding why? Today, I want to explore something that Jung understood deeply: the 5 unconscious habits that are aging your energy without you even realizing it. These aren't physical habits like poor diet or lack of exercise. These are psychological patterns that slowly drain your life force day after day, year after year. And the most concerning part, most people go through their entire lives never identifying them. Have you ever felt that strange disconnection? Achieving everything society told you would bring fulfillment, yet feeling inexplicably empty inside? Jung called this a spiritual burnout, and it's becoming increasingly common in our modern world. I recently spoke with someone who exemplifies this perfectly. On paper, they had everything: the successful career, the beautiful family, the financial security. Yet when we spoke privately, they confessed feeling like a shell of themselves, going through motions without any sense of meaning or purpose. Their energy wasn't just low, it was almost non-existent. If you've ever felt that you're giving your best effort but still watching your energy disappear, I want you to know you're not alone. Share that experience in the comments below. This community understands what you're going through because many of us have been there too. The beauty of understanding Jung's insights is realizing that once you identify these energy-draining habits, you can begin to transform them and reclaim your vital essence. The first habit that ages your energy is ignoring your dreams and personal symbols. For Jung, dreams aren't random neural firings or meaningless fantasies. They're the direct language of your unconscious mind trying to communicate with you. When you consistently dismiss these communications, your psyche works harder and harder to get your attention, draining your energy in the process. Jung wrote extensively about how dreams compensate for the conscious attitude, bringing balance to our psyche. When we ignore them, this balance is disrupted. Consider Sarah's experience. For months, she had recurring dreams of being trapped in a beautiful mansion where all the doors were locked. She dismissed these dreams as strange nightmares. But as the dreams persisted, she began experiencing chronic fatigue during her waking hours. It was only when she finally paid attention to these dreams that she realized they were reflecting her actual life situation: a prestigious job that looked perfect from the outside, but left her feeling trapped and unable to pursue her true calling. The moment she acknowledged this message and began making changes, her energy started returning. The unconscious mind doesn't communicate only through dreams, but also through symbols and synchronicities that appear in your daily life. When you brush these aside as coincidences or superstitions, you're essentially telling your deeper self that you're not interested in its wisdom. This creates an energetic disconnect that slowly depletes your vitality. Take a moment after this video to record your next significant dream upon waking. Reflect on its message without immediately dismissing it. What might your unconscious be trying to tell you? Share what you discover in the comments. The second energy-draining habit Jung identified is repressing your shadow. The shadow contains all the parts of ourselves that we've deemed unacceptable. Our anger, jealousy, selfishness, or any quality we believe doesn't fit with who we think we should be. But here's the crucial insight from Jung. The shadow denied doesn't disappear. Instead, it steals your energy to maintain its concealment. The more you push these aspects down, the more psychic energy is required to keep them suppressed. Michael's story illustrates this perfectly. As a spiritual teacher, he believed anger had no place in his life. Whenever he felt this emotion arising, he would immediately suppress it, convinced that spiritual people shouldn't experience such negative feelings. Yet he suffered from chronic headaches and insomnia that no doctor could explain. During therapy, he discovered the enormous amount of energy he was using to maintain this repression. When he finally allowed himself to acknowledge and integrate his anger in healthy ways, not only did his physical symptoms improve, but he experienced a surge of creative energy he hadn't felt in years. Jung believed that making the shadow conscious doesn't mean acting out these repressed qualities destructively. Rather, it means acknowledging them, understanding their purpose, and integrating them consciously. This integration releases the energy previously used for repression, making it available for creative and productive pursuits. What emotion do you tend to repress? How could you begin integrating it in a healthy way? The journey toward energy. Renewal begins with this honest self-assessment. The third habit Jung identified is living others' personas rather than your authentic self. The persona is the social mask we wear, the face we present to the world. While having appropriate personas for different social contexts is normal and necessary, problems arise when your persona becomes disconnected from your authentic self. As Jung noted, wearing the wrong mask exhausts you more than showing your true face. When you live according to others' expectations rather than your own truth, you create an energetic conflict within yourself that steadily depletes your vitality. James exemplifies this pattern. As a highly successful corporate lawyer from a family of attorneys, he had followed the path laid out for him since childhood. His persona, as the brilliant analytical legal mind, earned him praise and recognition. But privately, James had always been drawn to artistic expression and teaching. The constant effort of maintaining a persona misaligned with his true nature left him chronically drained. Despite material success, he found himself unable to enjoy his achievements, feeling as if he was living someone else's life. It was only when he began incorporating his authentic interests into his life, teaching law part-time and pursuing art as a serious hobby, that his energy began to rejuvenate. This habit is particularly insidious because our culture often rewards us for successful persona adaptation. We receive praise, advancement, and acceptance when we fit neatly into expected roles. Yet the price we pay energetically is enormous. Jung observed that individuals most disconnected from their authentic selves often develop what he called a provisional life, always preparing for real life to begin at some future point, but never fully living in the present. What aspects of your life exist solely to please others or maintain appearances? How would your life change if you released this obligation? Consider taking one small step toward authentic expression today. The fourth habit draining your vital energy is the imbalance between thinking and feeling. Jung developed a comprehensive theory of psychological types, identifying four primary functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. While we naturally favor certain functions over others, Jung believed that psychological health requires developing all these aspects of ourselves. When we over-rely on our dominant function and neglect its opposite, we create an energetic imbalance that manifests as fatigue, irritability, or a sense of incompleteness. David's case exemplifies this pattern perfectly. As a brilliant scientist, he prided himself on his rational, analytical approach to life. He dismissed emotions as irrelevant distractions, focusing exclusively on logical solutions and evidence-based decisions. While this served him well professionally, he began experiencing unexplainable physical symptoms, digestive issues, sleep disturbances, and a persistent sense of emptiness. What David failed to recognize was that his undeveloped feeling function was demanding attention. The energy required to continuously suppress his emotional life was gradually depleting his vitality. During a particularly difficult period, David reluctantly began keeping a journal of his feelings and engaging with art, activities he had previously dismissed as frivolous. To his surprise, these practices didn't diminish his analytical abilities. Instead, they created a complementary balance that actually enhanced his scientific work and dramatically improved his energy levels. His formerly neglected feeling function, once integrated, became a source of renewal rather than drain. Jung emphasized that the inferior function, the one least developed in our personality, holds the key to our wholeness. When we avoid this aspect of ourselves, we cut off access to a significant portion of our psychic energy. Which function do you most heavily rely on in your daily life? Is it analytical thinking, emotional processing, sensory experiences, or intuitive insights? Now consider its opposite. That's where your untapped energy may be waiting. What small step could you take today to nurture this underdeveloped part of yourself? The fifth and perhaps most significant energy-draining habit is resisting the process of individuation. Individuation, a cornerstone of Jung's psychology, refers to the lifelong journey of becoming who you are truly meant to be, integrating all aspects of your psyche into a cohesive, authentic whole. When we fight against this natural developmental process, we create tremendous internal resistance that manifests as fatigue, depression, or a pervasive sense of meaninglessness. Consider Elena's experience. For decades, she suppressed a deep calling toward creative writing, convincing herself that practical concerns were more important. She built a stable corporate career while ignoring persistent dreams and synchronicities pointing toward her literary talents. As years passed, her energy steadily declined, despite external success. She described feeling as though she was swimming against a powerful current in everyday life. Everything required more effort than it should. When she finally acknowledged her authentic path and began dedicating time to writing, she experienced what Jung might call a reconnection with herself, the regulating center of the psyche that orchestrates individuation. Her energy didn't just improve incrementally, it transformed qualitatively, taking on a vibrant, renewable quality she hadn't experienced since childhood. Jung observed that the psyche naturally moves toward wholeness unless we actively obstruct it. This resistance requires enormous energy. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it, but it demands constant effort. When you align with your individuation process, you release this wasted energy and tap into the natural flow of your authentic development. What internal calling have you been ignoring? What small step could you take today toward answering it? Even the smallest movement in this direction can begin to revitalize your depleted energy. It's important to understand that these 5 habits don't operate in isolation. They form an interconnected pattern in your psyche, each reinforcing the others. The person ignoring their dreams is often also repressing their shadow and living through an inauthentic persona. The individual with an imbalance between thinking and feeling frequently resists their individuation process as well. Jung recognized that these patterns create a complex web of energy depletion that can be difficult to untangle without awareness. This is why simple physical interventions, like changing your diet or exercise routine, sometimes fail to address profound energy issues. While physical health certainly matters, Jung understood that true vitality emerges from psychological integration and spiritual alignment. When you begin addressing these 5 habits, you're not just treating symptoms of fatigue, you're healing the underlying energetic disconnect that causes them. The journey toward energy renewal begins with simple awareness. Start paying attention to your dreams and the symbolic patterns emerging in your daily life. Notice which emotions you tend to suppress and experiment with, acknowledging them in safe, contained ways. Examine where your persona misaligns with your authentic self and take small steps toward congruence. Identify your dominant psychological function and gently nurture its opposite. Above all, listen for that quiet inner voice guiding your individuation process, and allow yourself to move in its direction. Remember that this work isn't about dramatic overnight transformations. Jung emphasized that psychological development follows organic patterns, like a tree growing from a seed. You can't force it, but you can create optimal conditions for natural growth. Each small shift in awareness creates ripple effects throughout your entire psyche. As you begin recognizing and transforming these 5 habits, you'll likely notice subtle changes in your energy, moments of unexpected vitality, creative insights, or a renewed sense of meaning and purpose. I've witnessed this process unfold in countless individuals who apply Jung's principles in their daily lives. People who were previously exhausted despite adequate rest discover a wellspring of energy they didn't know existed. Those who felt disconnected from their purpose reawaken to the unique contribution only they can make. Relationships that had grown stale become revitalized through authentic expression and integration. What I find most compelling about Jung's approach to vital energy is that it invites us to view fatigue not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a messenger carrying important information about our psychological alignment. When we experience chronic energy depletion, it's often our psyche's way of alerting us that something fundamental needs attention. Rather than simply pushing through exhaustion or masking it with stimulants, Jung encourages us to listen to what this fatigue might be trying to tell us about our inner lives. Consider how different this approach is from our cultural narratives about energy and productivity. We're often told that tiredness is something to overcome through sheer willpower or optimization hacks. Jung offers a radically different perspective, that true vitality emerges not from forcing yourself to perform despite depletion, but from aligning more deeply with your authentic nature and psychological needs. This alignment creates what he might call energetic resonance, where instead of working against your psyche, you're working with it. Let's look at these 5 habits through a different lens, not just as energy drains to eliminate, but as invitations to greater wholeness. When you ignore your dreams and symbols, your psyche doesn't give up on communicating with you. Instead, it often becomes more insistent, creating what Jung called compensation, dreams and synchronicities that grow increasingly dramatic until you finally pay attention. If you're experiencing unusual dreams or strange coincidences lately, consider that your deeper self may be trying to communicate something important that could revitalize your energy if acknowledged. The shadow aspects you've been repressing might actually contain qualities you desperately need in your conscious life. Jung observed that our most energetic qualities are often found in the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've deemed unacceptable. For instance, someone who has repressed their anger might discover that when properly integrated, this energy transforms into healthy assertiveness, boundary setting, and motivation. The very quality they feared becomes a source of vitality once conscious awareness transforms its expression. Similarly, the persona you've constructed to please others might be suffocating aspects of your authentic self that contain your greatest gifts. Jung believed that each person has a unique contribution to make, one that emerges naturally when they align with their true nature rather than conforming to external expectations. What parts of yourself have you set aside to maintain your social mask? What might happen if you allowed these authentic qualities more expression in your daily life? Many people discover that what they feared would lead to rejection actually attracts deeper, more meaningful connections. The psychological function you've neglected likely holds the key to a more balanced experience of life. If you're highly rational, your undeveloped feeling function doesn't make you weak. It offers access to values, connections, and meanings that pure logic cannot provide. If you're predominantly feeling-oriented, developing your thinking function doesn't diminish your emotional depth. It provides structure and clarity that can actually enhance your emotional life. Integration doesn't mean diminishing your strengths. It means complementing them with previously neglected aspects of your psyche. And perhaps most importantly, the individuation process you've been resisting isn't trying to derail your life. It's attempting to guide you toward your most fulfilling path. Jung observed that when people align with their individuation process, they often experience what he called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to guide and confirm their journey. These experiences create a sense of flow and purpose that naturally enhances vital energy. What synchronicities have you noticed lately? What might they be telling you about your path? One of the most beautiful aspects of Jung's approach is that it views energy not as a limited resource to be conserved, but as an abundant flow that increases when we align with our authentic nature. Unlike physical energy, which follows the laws of conservation, psychic energy can actually multiply through proper psychological integration. The person who integrates their shadow doesn't just reclaim the energy previously used for repression, they gain access to the vital force contained within the shadow itself. The individual who balances their psychological functions doesn't merely eliminate the drain of imbalance, they tap into entirely new sources of energy through their newly developed capacities. Jung often spoke about the self, the organizing center of the psyche that guides the individuation process. Unlike the ego, which identifies with only certain aspects of our personality, the self encompasses the totality of who we are, both conscious and unconscious. When we align with the self through the work of psychological integration, we connect with what Jung might call our energetic inheritance, the natural vitality that comes from psychological wholeness. This isn't about adding something new to who you are. It's about removing the obstacles to what has been there all along. I've witnessed remarkable transformations in people who apply these Jungian principles to their energy issues. One client, who had struggled with chronic fatigue for years, discovered that she had been ignoring powerful creative impulses that manifested in her dreams. As she began honoring these impulses through regular artistic expression, her energy steadily returned. Not just to normal levels, but to a vibrant state she hadn't experienced since childhood. The energy wasn't created by her art. It was released through her alignment with her authentic creative nature. Another individual found that acknowledging and integrating his shadow aspects, particularly repressed anger and ambition, completely transformed his previously depleted state. Rather than these qualities destroying his life as he had feared, their conscious integration gave him access to motivation and boundary-setting abilities he desperately needed. His energy didn't just improve incrementally, it underwent a qualitative shift from depletion to abundance. What's particularly fascinating about Jung's approach is that it doesn't require tremendous external changes to be effective. Small shifts in awareness and alignment can create profound energetic effects. Simply beginning to pay attention to your dreams, acknowledging repressed emotions in a journal, or taking one small authentic action aligned with your individuation process can initiate a cascade of energetic renewal. These internal shifts often lead naturally to external changes as your revitalized energy seeks appropriate expression in your life. Let me share with you 5 practical steps inspired by Jung's insights that you can begin implementing today to revitalize your depleted energy. These aren't quick fixes or surface-level interventions. They're foundational practices that address the root causes of energetic aging we've been discussing. First, begin a consistent dream practice. Keep a journal by your bed and record your dreams immediately upon waking, before they fade from memory. Don't worry about interpreting them right away. Simply note the images, emotions, and narrative elements that stood out. Over time, patterns will emerge that provide valuable insights into your unconscious needs and concerns. Pay particular attention to recurring themes or unusually vivid dreams. These often contain especially significant messages from your deeper self. As you develop this practice, you may notice your dreams becoming more vivid and memorable, as if your unconscious mind is responding to your renewed attention. One woman I worked with began this practice after years of ignoring her dreams. Within weeks, she noticed that her dreams were providing creative solutions to problems she was facing in her waking life. More significantly, she reported a subtle but persistent increase in her daily energy levels, as if the communication channel between her conscious and unconscious mind had been cleared of obstructions, allowing vital energy to flow more freely between them. Second, develop a shadow integration practice. Set aside time regularly to journal about qualities or emotions you typically avoid acknowledging in yourself. Ask yourself, what aspects of my personality do I find most difficult to accept? What emotions do I consistently push away? When do DT or I find myself strongly judging others? And might this indicate a disowned aspect of myself? Remember that shadow integration isn't about acting out these qualities destructively, but about bringing them into conscious awareness where they can be transformed and their energy reclaimed. A client who had always repressed his anger discovered, through this practice, that beneath this emotion lay a powerful capacity for healthy assertion and boundary setting. As he learned to acknowledge his anger in controlled ways, through journaling, physical exercise, and eventually appropriate verbal expression, he experienced what he described as an energy renaissance. The vital force previously used to suppress this emotion became available for creative pursuits and meaningful relationships. Third, examine the alignment between your persona and your authentic self. Make a list of the roles you play and the masks you wear in different contexts. For each one, ask, does this expression feel natural and energizing, or constrained and depleting? Where am I performing rather than being? What small adjustments could bring more authenticity to these roles without abandoning necessary social adaptations? Remember that persona work isn't about rejecting all social roles, but about ensuring they're flexible, conscious adaptations rather than rigid impositions that suppress your authentic nature. One individual realized through this practice that his professional persona had become so dominant that it had colonized his entire identity. By consciously creating space for other aspects of himself, particularly his playful creative side that had no place in his corporate role, he experienced a remarkable renewal of energy that transformed both his personal life and, surprisingly, his professional performance as well. The energy previously used to maintain an overly constricted persona became available for genuine engagement and innovation. Fourth, develop your inferior psychological function. If you're naturally oriented toward thinking and analysis, deliberately engage with activities that nurture feeling and values. If you're primarily feeling-oriented, develop structures and analytical practices that exercise your thinking function. If sensation dominates your experience, explore practices that cultivate intuition and vice versa. The goal isn't to abandon your strengths, but to create greater balance and wholeness by developing previously neglected aspects of your psyche. A highly analytical scientist found that regular engagement with art, music, and emotional expression, activities he had previously dismissed as frivolous, created an unexpected surge in his creative problem-solving abilities and overall energy. Rather than diminishing his analytical strengths, developing his feeling function complemented and enhanced his dominant cognitive style while eliminating the drain of psychological one-sidedness. Fifth, listen for and respond to the call of individuation. Set aside time for regular reflection on the deeper questions. What unique contribution am I meant to make? What recurring themes, interests, or talents have persisted throughout my life despite external pressures? What synchronicities seem to be guiding me toward a particular path? Then take one small step aligned with these insights, however modest it might seem. Jung believed that the psyche responds powerfully to even small movements in the direction of authentic development. A woman who had ignored a lifelong calling toward teaching discovered that simply volunteering 1 hour weekly in an educational setting created a disproportionate renewal of her vital energy. This small alignment with her individuation process seemed to access a wellspring of vitality that had been blocked by years of resistance. As she gradually expanded this alignment, her energy continued to increase, eventually supporting a complete career transition that fulfilled her authentic purpose. What makes these practices so effective is that they address energy issues at their psychological roots rather than merely treating symptoms. They create what Jung might call energetic coherence, where various aspects of the psyche work in harmony rather than opposition. When your conscious choices align with unconscious needs, when your persona expresses rather than suppresses your authentic self, when thinking and feeling complement rather than conflict with each other, and when your life direction harmonizes with your individuation process, energy is liberated from internal conflict and becomes available for creative, productive expression. I invite you to experiment with these practices, beginning with whichever resonates most strongly with your current situation. Notice how even small shifts in psychological alignment affect your energy levels. Pay attention not just to quantitative changes, having more energy, but qualitative ones as well. Many people report that aligned energy feels different, more flowing, sustainable, and regenerative than the forced energy that comes from willpower alone. Remember that this work isn't about perfection or immediate transformation. Jung emphasized that psychological development follows organic patterns that can't be rushed, but unfold naturally when given appropriate attention and conditions. Be patient with yourself as you explore these practices, celebrating small shifts and insights along the way. The journey toward energetic renewal is ongoing, not a destination to reach, but a path of continuous unfolding and integration. As you begin working with these practices, you'll likely notice that they mutually reinforce each other. Dream work often reveals shadow material that needs integration. Shadow integration naturally leads to more authentic persona expression. Developing your inferior function supports your individuation process. These interconnections create a positive spiral of energetic renewal that can transform not just your vitality, but your entire experience of life. I've witnessed this transformation in countless individuals who apply Jung's principles consistently. People who once felt persistently depleted despite adequate rest discover a sustainable vitality that supports their deepest purposes and relationships. Those who experienced life as a draining obligation reconnect with an intrinsic motivation that makes challenges energizing rather than depleting. Relationships that had become energetic burdens transform into sources of renewal through authentic expression and engagement. What Jung ultimately offers is not just a path to greater energy, but to what he might call energetic wholeness, where vitality emerges naturally from psychological integration rather than requiring constant effort to maintain. In this state, energy isn't something you have to constantly manage and conserve, but a natural flow that regenerates through aligned living. The 5 habits we've explored aren't just drains to eliminate, but doorways to this more integrated vital existence. As we conclude our exploration of Jung's insights into energetic aging, I want to share a profound observation he made near the end of his life. Jung noted that many people reach their later years having accumulated external achievements while neglecting their inner development. They arrive at what should be a time of harvest and integration, only to discover an internal landscape that feels barren and depleted. Yet he also observed individuals who radiated remarkable vitality well into advanced age. Not because they had preserved physical youth, but because they had maintained connection with the renewable energy of psychological growth and spiritual alignment. The distinction between these two paths isn't about intelligence, privilege, or luck. It's about the daily choices to either acknowledge or ignore the 5 habits we've discussed. Those who consciously work with their dreams, integrate their shadow, align their persona with authentic expression, balance their psychological functions, and honor their individuation process tap into what Jung called the inexhaustible fountain, the renewable source of energy that emerges from psychological wholeness. I'm reminded of Jung's own journey. Well into his 80s, he maintained a vibrant energy and creative output that astonished his colleagues. This wasn't because he had discovered some secret technique for physical preservation, but because he had devoted his life to the very practices he prescribed for others. He engaged deeply with his dreams, confronted and integrated his shadow, developed an authentic expression of his unique gifts, balanced his psychological functions, and followed his individuation path despite significant external pressures. The result wasn't just longevity, but a quality of vital presence that influenced everyone he encountered. Jung believed that this path of energetic renewal is available to everyone, regardless of age or circumstances, even if you've spent decades ignoring your dreams, repressing your shadow, living an inauthentic persona, neglecting psychological balance, or resisting your individuation process. You can begin the work of integration today. The psyche responds remarkably quickly to sincere attention, often revealing immediate energetic benefits even from modest shifts in awareness and alignment. I've witnessed this transformative process in people of all ages and backgrounds. A retired executive who had spent his entire career ignoring his dreams and creative impulses began a dream journal in his 70s. Within months, he reported not only improved energy and mood, but a quality of aliveness he hadn't experienced since childhood. A young professional who had constructed an exhausting persona to meet parental expectations found that even small steps toward authentic expression created a dramatic renewal of her depleted vitality. A middle-aged teacher who had always neglected his intuitive function in favor of practical sensation discovered through mindfulness practices a whole new dimension of experience that revitalized his work and relationships. These transformations aren't magical or mysterious when viewed through Jung's psychological framework. They're the natural result of removing internal obstacles to energy flow and accessing previously untapped resources within the psyche. The energy was always there. It was simply locked in psychological patterns that diverted it from conscious availability. When these patterns shift, the energy naturally returns. What I find most hopeful about Jung's approach is that it doesn't require extraordinary measures or specialized knowledge to implement. The practices we've discussed, dream work, shadow integration, authentic persona development, psychological balancing, and individuation alignment, can be incorporated into ordinary life through simple, consistent awareness and intention. You don't need to become a Jungian analyst or master esoteric techniques to benefit from these insights. You simply need to begin paying attention to the psychological patterns that have been operating below your conscious awareness. As you move forward from this conversation, I encourage you to approach your energy issues not just as physical challenges, but as messages from your psyche about needed integration and alignment. When you feel unusually tired, ask yourself, what dream have I been ignoring? What emotion am I repressing? Where am I being inauthentic? What psychological function am I neglecting? What aspect of my true path am I resisting? These questions alone can begin shifting the patterns that have been draining your vital energy. Remember that this work isn't about perfection or immediate transformation. Jung emphasized the gradual, organic nature of psychological development. Small, consistent steps toward greater awareness and alignment create cumulative effects that can profoundly transform your energetic experience over time. Be patient with yourself while remaining committed to the process. Each moment of attention to these patterns is valuable, even when obvious external changes aren't immediately apparent. I also want to emphasize that working with these patterns doesn't require abandoning your existing life or responsibilities. Many people fear that psychological integration will demand dramatic external changes they aren't prepared to make. While authentic development sometimes does lead to external shifts, these typically unfold organically as your revitalized energy seeks appropriate expression. The focus initially is simply on internal awareness and incremental alignment, which can occur within your existing circumstances. Jung's perspective on energy offers something our efficiency-obsessed culture rarely acknowledges. That true vitality isn't about managing limited resources more effectively. but about accessing the abundant, renewable energy that emerges from psychological wholeness. When various aspects of your psyche work in harmony rather than opposition, energy multiplies rather than merely being conserved. The person who integrates these 5 patterns doesn't just eliminate drains, they tap into sources of vitality that weren't previously available to conscious use. As we reach the end of our exploration, I want to leave you with Jung's powerful words that capture the essence of this journey. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. This awakening Jung refers to isn't just psychological insight. It's an awakening to the renewable energy of authentic living that remains available regardless of physical age or external circumstances. If something in this discussion has resonated with your experience, I invite you to share which of these 5 habits most reflects your current journey. Your comment not only helps solidify your own insights but contributes to our community's collective understanding. Subscribe to join us on this continuing exploration of depth psychology and spiritual growth. We're a community seeking to awaken our authentic vital energy together, supporting each other on this path of integration and renewal. Remember that the journey toward energetic wholeness isn't one you need to travel alone. Jung emphasized the importance of relationship and community in psychological development. As you work with these patterns, share your experiences with trusted others who can offer perspective and support. Sometimes we need external mirrors to recognize patterns we've lived with so long that they've become invisible to us. The very act of articulating these insights in community can accelerate the integration process and enhance its energetic benefits. Hope our exploration of these 5 habits has offered you both understanding of the patterns that may be aging your energy and practical pathways toward revitalization. May you discover, as Jung did, that authentic wholeness creates not just greater energy, but a quality of aliveness that transforms everything it touches. Thank you for joining me on this journey of insight and integration.